See my new strategy hat, my new MicroStrategy hat.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, he changed his name from MicroStrategy to Strategy.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because they're switching, to a full Bitcoin company.
So they're not going to do what they've done in the past?
Yeah, they still have it, but it's not going to grow or anything. They're going to be more of a Bitcoin, you know, treasury company. I think what he's
Yeah.
going to do, I'm just trying to get because I watch him all the time. I think they're going to, they just bought 5,000, 7,000 more Bitcoin this week.
Yeah.
I think they're going to get to a million. And I think at some point they're gonna be a bank, you know,
Wow.
where they can loan out. I think that's the word. I haven't heard that, but I'm trying to think where are they going with this, you know?
Right.
And they have strategy B with the Bitcoin symbol, and I'm thinking they could change that to B with a bank at some point.
Huh. That's interesting.
That's just my
There's
theory.
there's a lot of talk that about banking, like crypto banking and the DeFi thing recently. I see more and more people talking about that on some of the different social channels. Um, and it would make sense if if Bitcoin becomes regulated, number one, and number two, becomes more mainstream. Why not use that as collateral? Especially if the volatility sort of evens out in it. That's the biggest thing, is that it can go down a lot in a very short period of time. And for most people, um, that's scary to them. So,
I think watching it, and watching all the states that are legislations going through, for Bitcoin reserves, and watching now banks can store Bitcoin. They got rid of the SEP 121, and you've got more and more companies throwing Bitcoin into their treasuries, and countries are looking to do it. Czechoslovakia and El Salvador is there. I'm seeing less volatility on the downside. I mean, this whole stretch where we've kind of been going sideways again since after the election. We get down to maybe 95, maybe. One time you'll get a little tail, a wick down to 90, once in a while, but
yeah.
and then we go back up, and I was looking into it the other day because now I've turned into a full nerd on this. And they think, because what we don't see is the over the counter market. All we see is we go into Coinbase or whatever our broker is, and we see their books, for
Right.
what's moving. These big guys don't use like Coinbase to go and buy. They use the over the counter, and they do it in a way that you can't see it, you know?
Right.
And so they can manipulate price action just like they can in the stock market. And so I
Oh, yeah.
think I think they're accumulating under 100 right now as much as they can. And so I buy under 100. That's just my theory, you know. And then at some point you're going to see it spring up, to whatever 125 or whatever.
Yeah.
It just the supply and demand of it side just tells me it's got to happen.
Yeah.
But maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah.
I
No,
don't know.
I think that's the part of markets that people really don't know about, number one, and then don't understand, is that there is an exchange of, I mean, you think about old school Wall Street. You've got one guy on a trade desk at JP Morgan and one guy on a trade desk at Goldman Sachs, and they're across the street from each other, and down the street's called Wall Street, right? And so one calls the other and says, "Hey, I got, X number of bonds at this yield, at this price." And the guy says, "Well, I'll buy them at, instead of 4.5, I'll buy them at, 4.4." And they agree on it. And then the guy goes, a runner goes and picks up the bonds, and they move them across the street. Well, that doesn't happen on, the bond exchange. It doesn't happen in public. And I think, people talk a lot about dark pools and dark pool trading. And that's where the majority of this is happening. So it's all happening under the surface. And then when they get what they want, they bring it to the surface and the stock goes through the roof or it goes through the
Yeah.
floor.
Yep.
And
Exactly.
and I think that's, you're seeing that now in crypto, like you're just saying, is there's a lot going on that we don't understand or we don't realize. And I think you're right about how the range of what 105, 105,000 down to probably around not 89,000 has been that range for a while now. And it's accumulation. And most people would look at it and go, oh, it's just, it's a channel. I'll just trade the channel. But what these guys are doing is we're just accumulating, like you said, 1 million shares or whatever. And once I achieve this supply, I'm then going to go buy, along with everybody else is doing the same thing. We're going to push this thing higher. And
Yeah. I see, MicroStrategy buys 7,000 Bitcoin at $100,000 is a big, that should move the market.
it should,
Yeah,
but it's
because
not.
there's only 1.4 million left, and I don't know, there's 400 and what 80 that get mined every day, so it's got to come from somewhere. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
it's
totally.
and I just saw that the over the counter is actually drying up with the amount of Bitcoin in the over the counter market right now because whales are pulling it off and not putting it back on market.
Wow. So it's going to shrink the supply,
It's yeah,
which basically you're just like squeezing a tube of toothpaste
yeah,
from the bottom, and eventually the top's going to pop off because of the
yeah.
pressure, and the thing goes through the roof. Yeah, I mean, it could easily. I mean, with that kind of, if you think of that through that, that's easily 150, $200,000 position.
Well, that's where
Whew.
what's his name, Tom Lee's talking about that all the time. 250 by the end of the year,
Yeah,
and he's pretty good on his predictions on everything. At first I didn't really like him all that much, but as I've watched him over the last couple of years, I'm like, okay, you're pretty good. You know,
yeah, yeah. Well, I look at like the Mag 7 in the similar way. You look at this range they get in, and is that the same thing happening, but on the flip side? Are they, um, are they getting rid of the positions they've had, and now they're building short positions in this? And is when they get to the optimal amount, which is probably a percentage of their overall assets, short these positions, they all of a sudden go super heavy with that last, 0.5%. And
I
that's
mean
when they start pushing it down.
that's possible. I mean, you look at the sideways motion of we've been looking at it for weeks, months. The markets, which is driven by the Mag Seven.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
and now I think ever since DeepSeek came out, you're seeing uh, you're seeing questions of why are you spending so much money and when are we going to get this money back? And then
Yeah.
I saw BYD today. I put it in our newsletter. Um, BYD, the Chinese car company, is going to use DeepSeek as their AI function for driverless cars. Okay, so it must be fairly decent, you know,
Yeah.
to be able to do that. That's interesting to me.
Well, you think about just the natural, you know, point the arrow to your hometown business. So why would China adopt ChatGPT versus DeepSeek? Why would, a car company like you're talking about go to an American company when instead you just go to a Chinese company? And I think it's very naive to think that in some aspects, like intellectual aspects, China can never be a part, be as good as us. I don't, you can, because half of those guys are trained over here. They come to our education system and take it back. From a standpoint of like building chips, well, yeah, they have trailed in the technology to build those chips out, and that's why they're not competitive in that realm. But to think intellectually they can't compete with us is just naive. And I think that's that whole thing though, I've started thinking a lot about this because you got Anthropic, you got ChatGPT, you got Gronk, which is Elon's esque model. Um, at what point does it just become a commodity? Like, I mean,
like a computer.
like a
Yeah,
computer. And I
yeah,
think that's where I look at, Elon Musk's offer to buy ChatGPT or OpenAI for $97.5 billion. I think you and I were going back and forth a little bit yesterday about, or maybe it was my brother-in-law or somebody, about when, in a year he's going to take 9.7 billion because it's just everybody's got it now,
yeah.
it's just like a computer. Um, so yeah, I don't, I think the evolution of a digital currency or digital assets like Bitcoin and these others, it's now become, it's so fastly becoming mainstream and has a utility that people are now recognizing, like Bitcoin being digital gold.
Oh
Um,
yeah, it's a store of capital. I mean, I truly believe that.
yeah,
Um, to say it has no intrinsic value, like like your dad said, at the
yeah,
at the 3 o'clock meeting last week, is to me, he has his opinion, but I have mine. It does have intrinsic value because it is made, it's mined. People have processes. It's checked on ledgers. Okay,
yeah,
and it has value. Okay,
right.
and
It,
gold is, I mean, gold just sits there. I mean, you got to mine gold. You got
yeah,
to, somebody's got to go dig it out and you got to melt it, and whatever. So
exactly.
yeah, commodities are, you know, assets, and
Eh,
Bitcoin is an asset. For me, I think it's, in my opinion only, I think that, it's a chance for generational wealth of my lifetime to get it, just like, the Mag Sevens when they were, penny stocks.
Right.
Um, because of supply and demand. And we'll see. I'm no genius, I know, but but as investors and as traders and as just regular people, we got to think this stuff out, and not let not let CNBC tell us what the frick to do, because they have an agenda, and it's not
Right.
we are not their agenda, other than the rug pull regular people of their money,
Yeah.
which I think, when you look at charts and things and how high this market has and the valuations we have, I have a feeling we're close to rug pull time.
I was looking at volume, 7-day volume on NVIDIA today, and it's at like a negative 11.23% or something like that. So it's the volume over on average has declined basically. And there's one day where you saw the pivot in NVIDIA where it pivoted, it was up 2.49 or something percent versus the day before. But since then, the volume has declined. And oftentimes when you see that, especially on a move up, that means there's less momentum pushing that stock higher. And at some point that, each day that there's a less and less volume in NVIDIA's case, and I'm going to go back to, later today and look at all the Mag 7 and see if I see the same thing. And then what it says to me is like this momentum that we're seeing in NVIDIA in the last couple of days or last, well, 4 or 5 days is actually short-lived because the big guys are actually not doing this. This is where they're selling out of it. They're getting to that high. I think you had a top end of 140 is a resistance level to the green line of death.
Yeah,
Um, I'm right at 139 on my calculations, but my downside
can't
is
get much closer than that.
no, you can't. And you look at the price action today and it's similar to that. And so I think you're right. I think that rug pull is coming. It's a question of what is that event that lights it up? Is it NVIDIA's earnings, Um,
Yeah, I don't
could
know.
be. Was that next
It's
week?
yeah, I think so. And it might not be earnings, it'd be guidance. Guidance always trips you up. And
Yeah.
we had the other mags come out and say they're going to continue to spend, but we'll see if they actually do that, because uh, they put a chart on our Discord that people can go see who are members. It came off of Fox Business. Charles Payne did a graph that showed the spending versus the revenue, of all these
Uh-huh.
on Mag 7s. And, the spending is up here and the revenue is right here,
Right,
and
exactly.
at some point, quarter over quarter, investors and brokerages, and they're going to want their return back. Okay, because
Yeah,
Michael Saylor would say, well, why don't you just put all that money in Bitcoin? And you don't have to worry about it,
you're right.
and do the Bitcoin strategy. But we'll see.
Yeah,
And but it is, I think, we've been saying on our channel and in our Discord, and you and I, and retail is just hopping in, and everybody else is kind of getting out. And when you look at NVIDIA, all you got to do is go see all their executives have been selling. No one's buying. Okay. And
yeah,
so if they're not buying, why would I buy? I mean, I'll trade it if it gives me an opportunity, but
sure.
I'm not going to be a long-term investor at this point in NVIDIA or most of the mags right now. It's just,
Yeah,
it's been some catalyst has to happen to move it up or move it down. And we're so touchy right now, and there's so much going on, with the Trump administration that, he is on TV like and 10 times in the afternoon and then 8 times in the morning, and the markets and the press don't know what to do when he comes out,
yeah,
it's going to be exciting. You got to have your stops in if you're a trader, even if you're an investor. You got to be careful. And again, it's a stock pickers market, and there's less stocks to pick right now than there were when everything went up. You know,
yeah. I think there's, in everything that I look at, the calculations, there's more downside versus upside right now, especially in the top, 7 to 10 of the S&P, which has been the majority of all of this run up over the last year of the S&P. And when that rug is pulled out, I mean, that's a major downside. And I think, I'm hearing more of the technical traders talk about shorting these companies. There's going to be more opportunity on that side. That takes a special education to figure that out and do it right. So definitely not advice or recommendation, but yeah, I think I had a conversation today with my sister-in-law about she was wearing these new shorts. I was like, oh, those are cool, like camo shorts. She goes, I got them at Walmart. And I was like, oh, really? And she goes, yeah, they got all this cool stuff and they're by Reebok. And we got to talking about the brands that Walmart is now bringing in. And it reminds me of something that Bob, the Bolt guy, said, Amazon will eventually become Sears and Walmart will rule the day. And I mentioned that to her and she said, huh? And then she just stepped back for a second and goes, oh, now I get it. I understand what you're saying because they deliver on time. They provide, it's all right there. Whereas, I'm still waiting for stuff from Am. Ooh, shit. What happened? Did my charts come up?
no, you're
Okay.
good.
Um, I'm still waiting for stuff from Amazon that I ordered, a couple weeks ago.
Wow.
And yeah, so I don't know, maybe there's this rotation starting to happen to go from high beta tech to more consumer goods, consumer conservativeness kind of thing. Maybe
I
that's
mean,
where the opportunity is
I
in the
mean,
near future.
in the Mag 7, you think about it, it's harder and harder to grow at the rates that they have grown at to get their valuations now as you get bigger. I mean, look
Yeah,
at Berkshire Hathaway. They're in the top 10 of the S&P. He's got 326 billion on the sidelines, and treasuries losing money in treasuries because treasuries are paying 4%. No monetary inflation is probably 12%. So he's losing 8% a month
yeah,
on um, of my money, which is because I'm a shareholder in Berkshire also. Uh, but um, again, why does he have that money sitting on the sideline? And the only time he puts money, and that's the most he's ever had on the sideline, he's not finding value out there, and
right.
he's the world's greatest value investor. So
They should
um,
tell you something.
you got to kind of look as an investor or trader and go out and look at things, and that's why on our channel we have news every morning. We have programs like this where we talk about it. We have Zoom calls where everybody gets involved about all over the nation and country. We have in the world, we have people from around the world
Yeah.
tell us what's going on, so it really helps out. And it's very unique what we have in, the Platinum Channel and Best of Us Investors,
Yeah,
helping
absolutely.
people maintain their own wealth, and maybe grow their wealth,
I
with
think,
the trading side and the news and the technical side of the Platinum Channel with Carrie's fundamental analysis on the Gold Channel. And it's awesome. You can get everything and make up your own mind, but at least you
yeah,
have the resources to go do it.
it's a chain of, if you link them together, it can be a very powerful tool to creating wealth.
Yeah.
Absolutely.